Child stunting is a phenomenon where children are too short for their age. And it really matters because it's one of the leading indicators of malnutrition that's used in the Sustainable Development Goals to track progress around the world. At a recent conference at the LSE, we brought together some researchers to talk about how their research was helping us understand stunting around the world today.
Well, about 10 years ago, there was some very important research showing that most stunting started at birth, and then it really accelerated up until about 24 months of age, about 2 years of age, and then kind of stabilized after that. So what we're trying to do in our research is look at that relationship, this stunting by age relationship, and see how it's changed over time in different parts of the world. And so we show that in South Asia and some parts of Africa, a lot of the improvement just seems to be happening at birth. In other words, happening with better nutrition for the mothers when they're pregnant. And then in a few other countries, most of the change is happening from about 6 months when children start getting solid foods up until about 24 months. And in some countries, they're having stunting reductions in some part of that age bracket and actually worse conditions in other parts of the age bracket. So it's sort of a complex puzzle.
So stunting and growth faltering have been studied in developing countries in the last couple of decades, but no one has looked at it historically. My research using a data set of 14,000 children in America from 1918, which is the first sort of large-scale information on preschool children's heights, shows that growth faltering, in a similar way to what exists in developing countries today, existed 100 years ago in the United States. So this hasn't changed. The level of stunting, though, was pretty low compared to developing countries today. So US children were pretty robust. They averaged 1 standard deviation under the World Health Organization standards a century ago. The good news here is that growth faltering is a challenge we've dealt with before. The bad news is that it took several generations for it to be reduced to a very low level, which is what we see in the US today, where stunting is about 2% of the preschool population.
I think the key point that I wish to make about stunting is we are all thinking what works. And I think the time has now come to really focus on the difficult and the more structural and issues that needs to be tackled. And just to give you a very quick example, when kids came from adopted kids who were adopted in Sweden from India and brought to Sweden, and in the next and some of them were stunted kids, in 2 years, nobody was stunted. So it tells you what was different about Sweden compared to India. Well, the social environment. And in general, the standard of living conditions. I think it's time to tackle that head on.